And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're talking about the latest update around Terry McLaurin and his trade request. Next, we're going to be talking about the rookies for the Washington Commanders and who could possibly be a starter here in year one for the Washington Commanders. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the latest here around Terry McLaurin. And so if you did not get a chance to catch the news here yesterday, Terry McLaurin went ahead and requested a trade from the Washington Commanders. And at the time of this recording, there has not really been any new updates. And so that means that we haven't heard anything from Terry McLaurin. We also haven't heard anything from the Washington Commanders. And so with that being said, after a 24-hour period and just also looking at a lot of the hot takes around this, wanted to go ahead and reflect now and just where do both sides go? And so let's start with the key out of this, and that is trade, right? Trade requests. And so do I think that there is going to be a trade that happens here? And so I don't think that a trade is going to happen. I don't think that the Commanders are going to trade Terry McLaurin. And so that's my personal opinion here. And when I look at a trade and the possibilities here, you look at it from this standpoint. Yes, you're probably going to get picks that are going to help your team in the future. You would think. I mean, there's no guarantee with draft picks and how that's going to pan out, but you would have some draft capital. But the other thing about this is, I'm just not sure if you're going to get a player back at Terry McLaurin's value. And so with that, you have to ask yourself, is a trade really worth it? And so this is why I'm not sure that I'm sold on a trade, because yes, you do get some draft capital, but you're going to be unsure of what that draft capital really turns into. The player that you could get in exchange for Terry McLaurin, I don't think is going to be as valuable to this football team or this franchise, this city. Like, I just don't see that. And I don't know if that's a move that the Commanders want to necessarily take a chance with, especially if they are looking to win the Super Bowl. I think that is the bottom line here. The Washington Commanders aren't going out there to play for second place. This is a team that is trying to go ahead and win it all, especially when you are a game away from getting to the Super Bowl. And so I think that if you're trying to maximize your opportunity to win as a franchise, that means that you find a way to get Terry McLaurin out there with this offense that has been revamped a bit from last year. And I think it's just waiting for Terry McLaurin to get out there to really just take the lid off the top of this thing. And so I don't think a trade is coming. And I think that the next thing and next possible solution is that they come together and they get a deal done. I think that they're going to have to mend the fence here and they eventually get a deal done. And what that looks like, it's a deal where you get to the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is going to be something where you don't necessarily maybe love it, but you don't just dislike it either. It's kind of right there in the middle. And so, I'm thinking it has to be at the 30 million. I think that it has to be there. There are some reports out there that suggest that maybe Terry McLaurin is looking for more than that 30 million. Again, don't want to speculate because we haven't heard anything from Terry McLaurin, nor have we heard anything from the team. And so until we get that, I'm just speculating on the fact that 30 million would be, I think, a pretty good starting point to get something done. And so let me be clear. I do understand, from a franchise standpoint, they're looking at it, from the numbers standpoint, and also too, looking at it from the fact that, yes, he is going to be over 30 once that extension kicks in. I get all that with the analytics and things out there, but I also understand it from Terry McLaurin's side too. This is a guy that has been super productive for this franchise. We've talked about it before, 11 different quarterbacks. We've talked about, the 4 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons that he's had. We've also talked about the fact that he has not missed a game as well, or 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons that he's had. And then also, too, that he hasn't missed a game last season, super productive. He was second in the league in touchdowns behind Jamar Chase. I mean, this guy absolutely produces, and you just love who he is, not just on the field, but off the field. So he's been incredible here to the fan base, incredible to this franchise through the bad times and the good times here. And so you just want to see a deal get done. But ultimately, do the Commanders get it done? Because I just think that they're not going to trade him. And I think that the bottom line here is that I don't even see him even sitting out. Like, I don't see that happening. And I think that they just need to come to conclusions and get a deal done. And so that's my thoughts there. And so you guys let me know in the comments, do you think that Terry McLaurin is going to ink a deal and get something done? Because keep in mind, a lot of people were talking about what happened with Myles Garrett and him saying that, hey, he wanted to be traded and ultimately he got a deal done. And then just looking at Terry McLaurin's teammate here, Deebo Samuel. I talked about this, I believe, a day ago, and Adam Peters, I think, with the 49ers during the negotiations there, where he had requested a trade with the 49ers, and I think that they ultimately got a deal done. Brandon Ayuk, look, here's a guy that requested a trade last season, and I think he ultimately got a deal done, and so I think that something is going to get done here, but let's see what happens. Do you think he's going to get traded? Do you think a deal is going to get done? Do you think he sits out? Do you think he plays? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And so next, let's go ahead. Let's talk about starter, rotation, or bench. We're talking about the Commanders rookies here making a case for themselves. And so wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about camp performances and just, are they starter, rotation, or bench? And so let's start with Trey Amos. And so for me, Trey Amos has been, I think, as advertised. I think this guy is a corner that projects as one that could just be what you would call one of those guys where it can be a shutdown type of Allen type of guy, kind of thinking of Darrelle Revis back in the day. I think they used to call it Revis Allen. Like, I think that Trey Amos has those type of skills. I think he could be a guy that maybe could shut down the side of the field. So I know he's a rookie, and I know he's going to take his lumps, and it's going to take him perhaps some time to get there. But, man, it seems like he's awfully far ahead of the rookie curve. And I just love the ball skills that we're seeing out there. You're reading about it with the interceptions and the deflections and things like that. And just the interviews, I think that he just sounds like a player that has been in this league for some time. And you could just tell that when you're talking about the standards of the Washington Commanders, like Trey Amos definitely fits it. And what I like about what he brings with his playing style is I think that he brings a bit of nastiness to this defense, which I think that they're going to love him out there. And I think it's going to take our secondary to the next level. And I also think, too, it's going to help our run support, too, because ultimately speaking, I mean, defense it's all a collective unit. So we could talk about the individuals and things like that. Your corners, everybody has to be able to come up, help and run defense and things like that. At times, you've got guys dropping back in coverage, whether it's middle linebackers, maybe it's even linemen if you're doing a zone blitz. And so everybody's got to be on the same page. But make no mistake about it, I think that Trey Amos helps this defense become versatile in the secondary. And I think that he's a starter. I do. I think that he becomes a starter from day one. I've said this before. I think he has the clearest path to be a starter, and I'm sticking with that. And so we'll see what happens once preseason gets ready to kick off here against the Patriots. And so next, talking about Josh Connley Jr. And so Josh Connley Jr., I think really the insight that you get around most people here at camp is that this guy is a sponge as far as taking it all in with the knowledge and everything else like that, talking about his skills and how he could potentially be very good in this league, if not great, which I think he is going to be. I think for him, he's going to be probably more of a rotational piece. I think that he is a guy that he's going to certainly compete his tail off, but I don't know if he necessarily wins the job outright. I think maybe you see the same type of situation that you saw maybe with Brandon Coleman there initially in his rookie season. I think that he's going to get a ton of snaps. I think he's going to get a ton of experience. I just don't know if he's going to be your every down starter on the offensive line. But I think that this is going to be something that we certainly want to monitor, especially when, the real action starts, especially when it comes down to preseason. Does he get beat by some of these elite pass rushers? Is he able to anchor in? Is he able to get some leverage and open up some space, for these running backs and things like that? And so we'll be looking to see what happens in preseason. But I do think that he's in the thick of things to be a starter. But for me right now, I think he's a rotation piece. Next, talking about Jacory Croskey-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, which is what his teammates call him. And so we'll go with Bill. And so with Bill, I think that he is really trending towards being a starter for me. Now, I think that for him, He is like, you're reading about it and also seeing the clips. And so going back to something that I talked about here was a clip where he's going up into the line of scrimmage and then he meets, I think, Tyler Owens. And he shows his balance, power, explosiveness, ability to cut, ability to shrink and get into a hole and just get through the line of scrimmage. Like the vision, everything is there for Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Like he's showing you everything that an RB1 could do. And what I've been impressed with him is like, I knew he had some speed, like definitely knew that. And I knew it's like, man, you could see the flash of that, but man, just showing the power like that to go along with the elusiveness. And so this is a guy that I think definitely can be a starter. And I've been saying that he could be maybe R3 or RB3 going out of training camp, or not out of training camp, but out of the preseason. If he could be RB3, then I think he could definitely end up being your running back one. But I think that there's a possibility that he could be running back two by the time that this thing maybe ends here. And I'm talking about the end of the preseason, because a lot of respect for Austin Ekeler. I think he's going to definitely have a major role, but I think Austin Ekeler really is going to have a major role more so in the passing game. And I think that with Jacory Croskey-Merritt and the things that he's showing, he could be an excellent change in pace back to Brian Robinson Jr. And so I think that that is why I pencil him in as a starter. I mean, you can maybe say slash rotation piece, but let's see what happens, because I do think that if Jacory Croskey-Merritt starts off well, and we get off to a slow start in the running game, I think that you could see Jacory Croskey-Merritt being a starter very quickly. And so I'm telling you this, as a fantasy football player, I think that I'm going with Jacory Croskey-Merritt. So next player that I wanted to talk about here is going to be Kain Madrono. And so with Kane Madrano, I think he's shown some flashes, especially going out there in coverage and things like that. And so those things definitely looking like that they are certainly translating. And I think for him, he's probably going to be more of, I think, just coming off the bench initially. I think he could maybe get into being a rotational player. But I think for him, training camp, preseason, it's going to be all about him just figuring out what his it factor is, because you wonder, is he going to be a linebacker? Is he going to be a guy that's like a hybrid type of safety type? Like that is just really the question, is just what exactly is Kain Medrano? But make no mistake about it, he's definitely shown that he can go out there and cover, which we knew he had the speed and everything else. And so I like that about him, but I do want to see what he looks like when it comes to playing in the box. And so that is something that I think you see more of when it comes down to preseason play. And so I think that that's what I'm looking for from him. But I think that he's probably going to be a bench / rotation piece. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and talk about Jaylyn Lane here. And so Jaylyn Lane, to me, I think that he is going to be into that same category as Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I think that he could be starter / rotation piece here. I think that he's going to see a ton of snaps. And I think that Cliff Kingsbury is going to use him in a lot of different ways. And I think that he's a starter too, because if we're looking at just the offense, he's starter rotation. But if we're looking at special teams, outright starter. I think he's either your punt returner or your kick returner from day one. I think he can be that guy that gets his shoulders square up the field. He's going to help your offense maximize, the field that way, and just make it to where Jaden Daniels and these guys don't have to worry about, having to go so far to score and things like that. And so that's the great thing about the special teams, is that he's going to be a guy that's going to make teams pay for putting it into the field of play. But I think offensively, he has to get, I think, a lot of run here, because his ball skills so far, and going back to that touchdown where he caught it over two defenders there, and I think Mikey Sammer still was on the coverage. I know he didn't get his back foot in, but man, the fact that he was able to track the football like that, and so some of the clips and things that you see with him, it looks like that he has that. The speed is there. And I think that, like Deebo Samuel, you can use him in so many different ways. And I think with Deebo, you get more power, but with Jaylyn Lane, you get more elusive. Like he's just an elusive running back in the open field. I think that if you're a running back and you had his moves, like you would just have a terrific career. Like that's exactly what he does, man. He gets into the open field and he makes people miss. And so I just think that that type of speed, that type of elusiveness, showing his ball skills here, and if he can show that he can run every route in the route tree, he is certainly going to be a starter, not only in special teams, but but he could be a starter here on the offense full-time too. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here about our rookies. Do you think that Jaylyn Lane, starter, rotation, bench? Do you think Kane Madrono, starter, rotation, bench? Do you think that Bill is going to be a starter, rotation, bench? What about Josh Connley Jr., starter, rotation, bench? Also, too, Trey Amos. Is he a starter, rotation, or is it the bench? And then lastly, let me know what you guys are thinking here about Terry McLaurin. Do you think that a trade is imminent here? Do you think one is coming? Do you think that the two sides come to an agreement? Or do you think that he sits out, or do you think that he just ends up playing, on this last year of the deal? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Personally, I'm in the camp here of getting something done. I don't want to see him traded. And so I'm hoping that they do get something done here sooner rather than later. I think that it's important for the Washington Commanders to eliminate as many distractions as possible and focus on what is going to be coming this season, especially for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And so let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Commanders. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.